Bright sunlight bounced off the glass walls of the mansion in Lekki Phase 1. The gate stood tall, guarded by cameras and quiet security men. Inside the compound, 3 swimming pools sparkled like blue mirrors. A line of expensive cars rested silently in a marble-floored garage. The building itself looked proud, 12 bedrooms wide, every inch shouting luxury and power. It was a palace. And upstairs, in the biggest bedroom, Brandon Williams lay under silk sheets, snoring lightly. The clock beside his bed blinked past noon, but he didn't stir until his phone buzzed with a party video from the night before. He rubbed his eyes, stretched, then sat up slowly. With a grunt, he slid out of bed, letting the cold floor touch his bare feet. He walked out shirtless, wearing only designer silk boxers. Music exploded from gold-colored Bluetooth speakers as he moved through the hall, waking the house. "Martha! Martha!" His voice boomed. He stepped into the kitchen, tossing his head like a prince. "Where's my pineapple juice? Are you deaf or just dumb?" Martha, dressed in a faded apron, wiped her hands on her wrapper and stepped forward quickly. Her head stayed low. "Olga, I thought you said orange yesterday, so I—" A glass cup flew past her face and hit the tiled wall. It broke into sharp pieces. "You thought? You're paid to bring juice, not to think." He pointed at James, who stood by the sink peeling plantains. "And you, do you want me fat? Everyday plantain. Maybe I should send you to a school kitchen." James didn't look up. He bent his head lower and kept peeling. Silence spread through the kitchen. The maids moved quietly like mice. No one dared speak. Everyone had learned how Brandon reacted when crossed. Upstairs, Mr. Richard Williams sat at his desk, his suit jacket folded neatly on a chair behind him. His eyes were on his laptop, fingers typing quickly. His phone buzzed beside him. He glanced at it, saw Brandon's name, then turned it over and kept working. At dinner that night, the family sat around a polished mahogany table. Silver cutlery clinked softly as Richard sliced his steak. "I built this empire from dust," he said without looking up. "If I hand it to you now, it'll be dust again in 2 years." Brandon leaned back, fork in one hand, phone in the other. He smirked. "You'll live another 20 years. We have time." Richard looked at him. "And if I don't?" Brandon gave a small laugh. "I'll hire thinkers. I already have drivers, cooks, and cleaners. One more won't kill me. That's why we pay them, isn't it, Obby?" Richard dropped his fork gently. He sat still, watching Brandon. His face showed nothing but tiredness, the kind that came from years of stress and watching someone waste every opportunity. He whispered, "You think you're strong because you've never seen rain. But storms come, Brandon. Always." Brandon didn't respond. His AirPods were already back in his ears. On weekends, the house glowed like a nightclub. Music, laughter, expensive perfumes mixing with the smell of grilled meat. Chloe, his girlfriend, usually arrived in the evening, heels clicking on the tiles, a drink already in her hand. One night, after a fight with the bouncers, she cornered him in the lounge. "You treat people like trash," she hissed, flipping her curls. Brandon pointed at Anna, who stood by the door with a basket of unfolded laundry. "She folded my clothes like a pig. What do you want me to do? Thank her for it. She's a person." He laughed. "If she wants to be respected, she should be a CEO, not a cleaner." Chloe folded her arms. "And what are you? What exactly have you done?" Brandon turned to the bar, poured himself a drink, and smiled over his shoulder. "I was born rich. And I do that job better than anyone." Another morning came. Sunlight spilled across the white tiles as Brandon walked in, sunglasses on, shirt unbuttoned halfway. He dropped his keys on the side table and yawned. The mansion was too quiet. "Where is everyone?" he shouted. His voice echoed. He walked to the back, then spotted Linda under the shade, folding clothes beside the pool. Her hands moved slowly, neatly. "Why's it so dead in here?" he asked, raising his voice again. This place feel like a grave. Linda looked up and smiled gently. Sorry, sir. Chief's not feeling well. He has a headache. Brandon scoffed and waved her off. Then that's his problem. Turn up the music. He spun around and walked back inside, muttering under his breath. Later in the study, Richard sat alone, a file open before him. His tie hung loose around his neck. His eyes moved over the pages, but his mind wandered. His hand paused. Then slowly he picked up a new file, this one with a woman's name printed boldly at the top. Grace. Monday morning came soft and slow. The mansion gates opened with a soft groan. A yellow taxi rolled in and stopped near the main entrance. The door opened. Grace stepped out. Her black uniform looked fresh, stiff from ironing. Her ponytail bounced slightly as she pulled her small suitcase from the back seat. She paid the driver without fuss and walked toward the front door. James, halfway down the stairs, stopped when he saw her. "You must be the new maid," he said. Grace nodded. "Name's Grace." Her voice held a quiet boldness. Her Ghanaian accent shaped the words cleanly. James tilted his head, surprised by her confidence. He motioned up the steps. "Chief is waiting." Grace followed him in. Her eyes moved slowly across the floor, walls, and lights. She noticed the flowers were too perfect. Quiet too thick. She gripped her suitcase handle tighter but didn't flinch. "Wait here," James said, pointing to the lounge. She stopped beside a tall white pillar and stood still. Her eyes watched everything. A shout came from above. "James, where's my coffee?" Brandon's voice rang down the hall. "And who's dragging luggage like we run a hotel?" James glanced up the stairs. "New maid. Her name's Grace." Brandon groaned loudly. "Another one. What are we now, 12? He stomped back into his room, footsteps heavy. Grace smirked. Her lips barely moved, but her eyes gleamed. Footsteps clicked on the floor. Richard appeared in a black suit, a file in his hand. His eyes landed on Grace and stayed there. He stopped in front of her. "You must be Grace." "Yes, sir." He opened the file, flipped a page and raised his brow. 6 houses in 4 years. Why did you leave the last one? Grace raised her chin. The son tried to touch me. I broke his wrist. Silence. Richard said nothing for a moment. Then with a slow nod he closed the file. You start today. Survive 1 week, I double your pay. He turned to leave, then paused and looked up toward the ceiling. My son is difficult. Don't argue with him. Grace didn't blink. I don't argue, sir. I stand my ground. Richard looked at her a moment longer. Then he walked away. By afternoon, Martha, James, Linda, and Anna stood in the kitchen as Grace walked in. The women looked her over. Martha grinned. You look like trouble. Grace dropped her bag gently beside the fridge. I've been called worse. The others chuckled softly. The tension in the room began to loosen. Just a little. Brandon pushed the kitchen door open without knocking. The gray sweatpants hung loose on his hips. His bare chest rose and fell under the kitchen's soft light. Headphones rested over his ears, a smoothie cup clutched in one hand. He didn't glance up. Anna, where's my almond milk? His voice cut through the room like a whip. This smoothie tastes like cement. Grace's rag slid across the counter. Her hands paused. She didn't meet his eyes. Then maybe don't drink it. Brandon's body stiffened. Slowly his head lifted. His eyes locked on Grace. Surprise flickered there, a king caught off guard. Who said that? Grace lifted her chin, steady and calm. I did. He blinked, confusion twisting his face. Are you new here? Yes. And you're already talking nonsense. Grace wiped her palms on her apron, stepping forward without hurry. I wasn't hired to massage egos, sir. If your milk tastes like cement, that's a kitchen problem, not a shouting match. James's eyes grew wide. Martha's breath caught behind the kitchen door. Brandon's smirk faded. For the first time in a long time, someone stood up to him. He narrowed his eyes. "What's your name again?" "Grace." "Grace," he repeated with a slow, mocking smile. "Let's see how long that mouth lasts." He turned and left, the smirk never leaving his lips. Grace turned back to the counter, voice low but sharp. "Long enough to clean this house and the rot in it." Sunlight poured through the blinds, casting long gold lines across the plush cream couch. The living room held a strange quiet. Staff moved with soft steps, careful not to break the tense air that Grace carried with her. Calm and unyielding. Brandon lay sprawled across the couch. His laptop balanced lazily on his lap. His feet rested on the polished table, shoes still on, leaving dark smudges. Tabs flicked open and closed. One a Twitter rant, another music, a third a photo from a party he barely recalled. A low chuckle escaped him. "See these girls." His fingers zoomed in on a dim photo. Chloe wrapped around another man. Clown behavior. Footsteps approached softly behind him. "You're laughing alone." Grace's voice was quiet, almost teasing. Brandon didn't look up. "I wasn't talking to you." Grace stepped into the center of the room, her uniform crisp, ponytail tight at the nape. Hands folded neatly, eyes sharp. "I wasn't talking either," she said. "But sometimes when I see a king built on sand, I wonder who gave him the crown." Brandon's head lifted slowly, eyes narrowing. "What did you just say?" Grace took a step forward. "Why do you treat people like dirt? Your father's staff, those who work for your comfort. What do you gain by shouting at James, embarrassing Martha, scaring Anna like she's a punching bag?" Brandon closed the laptop with a slow, deliberate movement. A crooked smile tugged his lips. "You've got guts. But I don't recall asking for a lecture from the broom lady." Grace held her ground, voice steady. "And I don't recall signing up to be a punching bag. If money bought respect, you'd return it and ask for a receipt." Brandon rose. His frame filled the room, shoulders squared. "Watch your mouth, girl." Grace's reply came calm, eyes unblinking. "Or what? You'll shout again. Break another glass. You think fear is respect." His hand shot out. The sharp crack echoed. Grace's cheek stung. Her head jerked slightly, but she stayed upright. Her hand moved slowly to touch the burning skin. Brandon's eyes widened. He thought it was done. Then Grace's palm struck him once, twice. Fast and fierce. Backhand, forehand. Her hands flew like lightning, driven by fire and fury. The second hit rang louder, filling the house. Sounds spilled down the hall. Linda gasped from the corridor. Martha's hand covered her mouth behind the kitchen door. James dropped his spoon in the dining room. Brandon froze, fingers trembling at his face. Silence swallowed the room. The sharp voice cut through. "What in God's name is going on here?" Richard Williams stormed in, black suit perfect, folder in hand, confusion knitting his brow. His eyes swept the room. Grace trembling but steady, Brandon holding his face, others frozen like statues. "Brandon." "Grace." "Wetin day happen for here?" he barked. Grace stepped back, eyes wide, composure slipping for the first time. "Sir, I swear to God I can't beat my boss. Am I mad?" "No be me oh." Her words stumbled out. "I clean table, he vex, he slap me." "Shuck. No reflex. I no plan em, sir. I swear." Richard's gaze snapped to Brandon. "You slapped her." Brandon opened his mouth, then shut it tight. Grace breathed heavy, stepping back. "Sir, I no fit beat my boss. Get family. I know dey mad. I dey fear God. But the slap come from nowhere. My hand, sir, no reflex. I sorry." Richard's eyes flicked between her and the red mark blooming on Brandon's cheek. The room held its breath. Martha moved forward. "Chief, sir, not true. He slap her first. We all hear am." Linda nodded. "Yes, sir. One. She just defend herself." Richard rubbed his forehead and pinched the bridge of his nose. Everybody go back to work. Brandon, my office. Now. Grace stood frozen. Sir, a beg no sack me. I go carry my bag if you say, but make you no vex. Richard gave a last glance. Go to staff quarters. We'll talk later. Grace nodded, hand brushing her cheek. Each step carried weight as she left. The week passed heavy and quiet. The mansion breathed tension beneath its polished floors. No eruptions, only smoke and simmering. Staff whispered softly, footsteps softer still. Brandon wore his bruised pride like a tailored suit, tight, sharp, unyielding. Grace moved like a shadow, silent but there. Her cleaning was precise, sharp. Every corner watched. When Brandon entered a room, Grace's eyes dropped to the floor. Dust and grime vanished under her touch, her silence cutting sharper than words. No apologies came. No fights. Just silence, thick and loud. Sunlight stretched across the tall windows of Richard's office. Heavy books lined the shelves. A framed photo of Richard and a younger Brandon hung behind the desk. Grace stepped inside, the black uniform crisp, ponytail sleek. Sir, she said softly. Richard looked up, glasses perched low, pen in hand. Close the door. Sit. Grace obeyed, face steady. Silence held. Richard flipped his pen once, twice, watching. Do you know why I called you here? Grace shook her head. You slapped my son. Grace's throat tightened. Yes, sir. But he hit me first. Richard raised a hand. I'm not here to question that. I'm here to thank you. Grace blinked. Richard leaned back. Brandon has always been wild. Private schools, tutors, threats. Nothing worked. Staff fear him. His mother spoils him. I tried everything. But you. He paused. You made him freeze. Made him silent. That's power. Grace shifted, unsure. I don't condone violence, Richard said quickly. But sometimes God sends strange answers. Maybe you're one. He slid a brown envelope across the desk. For your troubles. And what you're doing. Grace stared, then took the envelope quietly. Thank you, sir. She left without relief, without triumph. Later, dusk wrapped the poolside in amber. Brandon scrolled his phone, orange juice in hand, brow furrowed. Grace appeared, tray balanced steady. Juice for you, sir. Fresh. He glanced up. Did I ask you for juice? She set it down anyway. No. But you need it. That one is stale. His eyes narrowed. You watching my juice now. I watch the house. Juice is part of the house. His steps were slow, heavy as he approached. Do you think you're better because you stood up to me? Grace met his eyes. You're used to yes. I speak truth. That makes me useful. He scoffed. Useful. You slapped me. Only after you did. Twice. He stepped closer. The space between them thickened. Careful, Grace. My silence isn't peace. It's planning. She smiled faintly. Good. Let me know when it starts working. So far I've seen only silence and sulking. Brandon clenched his jaw. Grace turned. Her hips swayed steady. Back straight. Head high. She walked away. The hallway lights buzzed low above Brandon's head as he hovered just outside his father's office door. The file he had come to fetch hung forgotten in his hand. Voices drifted from the room, clear and sharp. Grace is smart. She's fearless. Might be the only one who can humble that boy. Richard's voice floated out, calm and sure. I'm not firing her. I'm doubling her pay. Brandon's fingers clenched around the folder. His jaw tensed. His breath came slower. He turned without a word and walked away, leaving the file untouched. The morning sun poured gently into the Collins kitchen, casting golden shapes across the tiled walls. Grace stood near the sink, sleeves rolled neatly to her elbows, slicing green peppers with quiet rhythm. Her voice rose softly in a hum, a peaceful tune carried on steam and spice. Martha leaned against the fridge, arms folded. You're happy this morning, oh? Grace didn't pause, just smiled slightly. Happiness wear face, but peace wear style. James snorted, brushing crumbs from his shirt. Just pray say Brandon no hear you day laugh. That boy day boil. Grace turned the knife with ease. Let him boil. Cold water no day cook beans. From the corridor beyond, Brandon stood in silence. His eyes never left her. He watched her. Not with anger. Not quite. Something else sat behind his stare. Something he didn't have words for. The mansion breathed slowly through the morning, its high ceilings echoing soft steps and distant chatter. The marble floors gleamed beneath Grace's careful work. She moved like she belonged there, deliberate, steady, each movement exact. Her ponytail swayed gently behind her, matching the sharp lines of her clean black uniform. At 10:03 a.m. the doorbell rang. Grace turned toward the entrance, already reaching to answer. But James intercepted her halfway, grinning. "Madam, allow me. I get small more." He chuckled. "No wala." Richard appeared from his office moments later, his brown suit brushing the hallway wall. His steps slowed as male voices rose near the entrance. "My guy still living like a king, I see. Beg. Come inside, Jaw. I still day try manage." The man who stepped in was tall, broad-shouldered, his skin smooth and hair cropped low. His cream-colored senator wear caught the light. His laugh filled the house. "Caleb." Grace entered the sitting room, a silver tray steady in her hands. She greeted him, set the glass before him, and turned without a fuss. Caleb blinked. "Who's this?" Brandon shifted in his seat. "Grace. The maid." Caleb's head tilted. "Maid coup. You day joke. She resemble hotel manager for Lekki, not maid." Grace's back straightened, but her steps didn't falter. She left with her chin high, the corners of her mouth barely curved. Caleb leaned closer to Brandon. "If Nami, I go marry that kind babe quick." Brandon scoffed. "Forget it. She get mouth like fire. Even fire day warm soup sometimes." Grace returned with more snacks, moving quiet and smooth. Caleb's eyes followed her with amused respect. Upstairs, silence hung between two figures in the hallway. Grace and Brandon faced each other, only a few steps apart. Neither moved. "You do like say you know Sabi give space," Brandon muttered. Grace crossed her arms. "I give space. You just too full of yourself to see it." He sneered. "Talking broom. You know day rest." She stepped closer, voice steady. "You good at shouting. That's all. You can't fix things. Can't hold your emotions. Just noise and slaps." Brandon's hand twitched. "One more word, you're fired." Grace's gaze didn't waver. "You. Fire me. You no even sign my pay. You just day form. This house no be yours." He snarled. "You day mad." She tilted her head. "And you. You already lost your respect. No coming back." Silence grew between them, thick as storm clouds. Grace stepped past him, slow and calm, and disappeared down the corridor. Evening cast soft amber light through the lounge windows. Caleb reclined on the plush couch, sipping slowly. Grace passed behind him with a cloth, wiping the glass table. He glanced up. "Grace. Abby." She straightened. "Yes, sir. You day always calm. That's good. Balance day your body." She smiled faintly, her eyes softer. "You're kind, sir. No be kindness. Not truth." Her smile lingered as she moved away. From across the hall, Brandon leaned on the wall, hidden behind the curtain. His eyes narrowed at the sight of them. His fingers curled loosely at his sides. "Grace juice again," he said, voice flat. "Yes, sir." Caleb turned to him. "Guy, you know day talk please." "Or thank you." Brandon ignored him. Grace returned soon after, tray in hand, her gaze fixed on the table as she set the glass down. She didn't look at Brandon, didn't speak to him, just turned and walked away. Caleb watched her go, then leaned in. "You like her?" Brandon froze. What? That's why your blood day hot. You no hate her. You just hate say she no fear you. Brandon said nothing. His jaw worked. Caleb smiled slowly. Na that one day pain pass. Outside night fell soft and breezy. Grace stood near the balcony, her arms wrapped around herself. The lights of Lagos twinkled far in the distance. Her eyes were distant, her breath calm. She didn't move. Behind a thin curtain, Brandon lingered. He watched her. Not like before. Not with anger. Not with contempt. He didn't understand her. Couldn't. Her calm unnerved him. Her grace shook something in him loose. And for once, he wasn't sure what to do. Days passed. Weeks shifted. Caleb visited more. His footsteps became familiar. His voice joined the daily rhythm of the house. And he sought Grace. Always Grace. They shared quiet laughter. Brief conversations. Little glances. Caleb handed her small things. A wrapped sweet, a flower, a folded note. She never gushed. Never played soft. But the warmth in her eyes, the way her fingers lingered on the gift for a moment longer, it said everything. Brandon noticed. Every time. His chest grew tight. His shoulders stiff. His eyes followed them. He never named it. Couldn't. But it burned quietly inside. And it grew. Grace's brow lifted slightly. Her eyes softened, but her face stayed calm. No anger, no surprise. Just steady. She folded the cloth in her hands slowly. You're not in love, Brandon, she said, voice even. Brandon's mouth opened, but she gently stepped in before he could speak. You didn't say it, but I know. You're confused. You think it's love just because someone else sees me now. That scares you. Brandon's jaw tightened. His voice grew louder. No, this has nothing to do with Caleb. Grace gave a faint smile. She shook her head, still calm. You never saw me until Caleb did. You've only ever looked at yourself. Brandon moved closer. His hands curled into fists at his sides. That's not fair. Grace's eyes didn't flinch. It's the truth. She turned toward the table again, picking up the silverware to polish. But Brandon didn't leave. I don't know what's happening to me, he said, voice low now. Grace paused mid-polish. I feel like I'm losing control. And I hate it. But when you're near me, I feel something. Something real. Grace's fingers pressed tighter around the cloth. She kept her back to him. You're not used to women like me, she said quietly. I don't bend. I don't flatter. I don't need saving. That's why I interest you. But it's not love, Brandon. It's just different. She turned around slowly, meeting his eyes. And you're calling it emotion. Brandon dropped his gaze. His shoulders slumped. I didn't come here for this to happen. Grace's voice was quiet. And I didn't come here for you to notice me. Silence stretched out between them like a thick curtain. Then Grace let out a small laugh. She tilted her head, her lips curling. You're just jealous, she said with a smirk. Because Caleb treats me better than you ever have. Brandon's mouth parted, but no words came out. Grace stepped past him. She stopped at the doorway, glancing over her shoulder. Oh, and Caleb's taking me out tomorrow. Brandon spun to face her, his voice sharp. You're not allowed. Who gave you permission? Grace turned halfway, her voice smooth. Your father did. Her heels clicked softly as she walked away. Her ponytail swayed behind her, and her footsteps echoed down the hallway. Brandon didn't move. He stood frozen, staring at the empty hallway like something precious had slipped through his hands. For once, he had nothing to say. Outside, the sun hung low, casting golden light across the mansion. The air shimmered with evening warmth. In the driveway, a polished black Lexus waited, engine humming softly. The driver stood still, holding the back door open. Grace stepped out of the house. She was no longer wearing her black maid's uniform. Instead, she wore a scarlet-red gown that clung to her figure with grace. It had a high neckline, but the deep V-back revealed her smooth skin. Her ponytail was still neat, but soft waves now flowed through it. Gold earrings glinted at her ears, and her red heels tapped against the stone as she walked forward. Caleb stepped out of the car. His black velvet tuxedo hugged his tall frame. A slim watch gleamed on his wrist. His low-cut hair was clean and sharp. In his hand was a single rose. He held it out with a smile. "You look divine." Grace took the rose, returning the smile. "You don't look too bad either." They walked toward the car side by side. Elegant. Izzy." From behind the curtains, Staff peeked and whispered. Laughter tickled the air. They weren't a couple yet, but they looked like they were. Upstairs, Brandon stood by the window in his bedroom. His fists were tight at his sides. He had seen everything. He turned suddenly and stormed out, his footsteps pounding the floor. Down the hall, he flung open the door to the home office. Inside, his father, Richard, sat behind a wide desk, reading papers with a cup of tea beside him. The scent of incense mixed with polished wood and old books. Richard looked up. His gray CF tan shirt was crisp, his eyes calm. "Brandon," he said, "you usually stay far away from this office. What brings you?" Brandon stepped in and shut the door behind him. His face looked different, uncertain, almost raw. "I need to talk," he said, moving to sit down. Richard set his pen aside and leaned back. "Go on." Brandon's throat moved. He rubbed his hands together. "It's about Grace." Richard's brow shifted slightly. "The maid?" "Yes," Brandon said. I think I'm in love with her." Richard's eyes blinked once, his face still unreadable. Brandon's voice cracked. "I don't know when it started. I don't even understand it. But it's real. And she doesn't believe me. She thinks I'm only reacting to Caleb." His head dropped. "I've never felt this way before. I want to marry her. It's not just because she's beautiful or because I feel challenged. I've seen something in her I've never seen in anyone else." Richard leaned back further. His eyes searched Brandon's face. "That's quite something to hear." He paused. "Grace surprised me too. Strong, focused, unshaken. I respect her." Brandon looked up, his eyes hopeful. "So you don't mind?" Richard's tone sharpened. "I didn't say that." Brandon's chest rose. "Love isn't just emotion, Brandon," Richard said. "It's what you do. If you truly care, show it. Respect her. Be patient." Brandon nodded. "But what if she doesn't believe me?" Richard folded his hands on the desk. "Then earn her trust. And earn her forgiveness. Because honestly, you've given her more reason to push you away than to draw close." Brandon sat still. His heart thudded. Outside, the Lexus was already halfway down the driveway. Grace's red dress glowed under the golden sky. And in that moment, Brandon knew the fight had only just begun. Morning light broke gently across the compound. Wind rustled the mango leaves just outside the kitchen. Grace moved through the kitchen quietly. She wore her black uniform again. Her ponytail was tight, smooth. Her hands worked with calm focus as she cut fruit and placed it carefully onto a breakfast tray. She poured juice into the last glass when a soft knock came from the corridor. "Grace," a deep voice called. He turned. Richard stood in the doorway, dressed neatly in a crisp brown CF tan. He wore sandals and held a folded newspaper in one hand. His face didn't hold its usual boss-like expression. He looked more like a father. "Good morning, sir," she said, bowing slightly. "Morning, Grace." His steps were slow as he walked into the kitchen. "Could we talk? Just for a few minutes?" Grace nodded, drying her hands and following him outside. The garden behind the house was quiet. The wind passed gently through the trees. They sat on a stone bench beneath the neem tree. Richard's voice was low. "I'll go straight to it. This is about my son. Brandon." Grace kept her eyes forward. Her silence gave him space to continue. I've watched him for years think the world owes him. Arrogant, cold. But something's shifted in him lately. And I believe it's because of you. Grace turned her head slowly. Sir. Her voice was quiet. There's nothing between Brandon and me. Not really. Richard nodded slowly. And Caleb. She gave a small smile. He's just a friend. We talk, laugh. That's all. Richard studied her face. I believe you. But you need to know something. He paused. Brandon came to my office. He said he wants to marry you. Grace's eyes widened. Her lips parted slightly. He said that. He did. And not like usual. His voice shook. His hands moved. Grace, he loves you. Grace looked down. She brushed something invisible from her lap. He's never treated me like I mattered, she whispered. And yet when he thought he might lose you. Richard nodded. It changed him. Sometimes the right person brings out what's hidden. And I think that person is you. Her fingers moved slowly along the hem of her apron. I'm not asking you to say yes now, Richard added. Just know he's serious. And he's trying. Grace looked up at last. I'll think about it. That's all I can say. Richard gave a small smile. That's enough. They sat together under the neem tree for a little while, the wind gently playing with the edges of their clothes. Grace stood first and bowed slightly. I should return to the kitchen. Richard watched her walk away, her steps quiet and thoughtful. His eyes stayed on her until she disappeared inside. Then he opened his newspaper again, a faint smile forming on his lips. The courtyard smelled fresh. Morning light stretched across the compound, touching the green hedges and clean concrete floor. A soft wind passed through the clothes hanging on the line. Grace stood beside the laundry line. She clipped a white shirt to the rope with 2 wooden pegs. Her black maid's uniform hugged her figure neatly, and her ponytail, sleek and tight, rested on her back. She didn't look up, but her hands moved slowly, almost as if she were thinking deeply. It had been days since she last spoke to Richard. Since then she had stayed quiet, doing her work, keeping to herself, but always with a certain stillness in her chest. Footsteps came from behind, soft but sure. The sound made her pause. He turned. Brandon stood there. He wasn't wearing his usual designer suit or shiny shoes. Instead, he wore a clean white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His dark jeans fit simply. His hair was trimmed neatly, and his shoes were dusty at the edges. His face didn't hold its normal pride. Looked unsure. Grace, he said. Her arms folded gently across her chest. You again, she said, her eyebrow lifting. What now? Forgot your orange juice. Or want to check if I folded your shirts wrong again? Brandon gave a small, nervous smile. No. I came to ask you something. And maybe to say sorry. Grace tilted her head slightly. Her face didn't change. I'm listening. He stepped closer. His hands stayed open at his sides, like he was carrying no weapons, no defense. When you first came, I was someone else. I thought money and my last name were all that mattered. I spoke carelessly. I acted worse. Grace didn't speak. Her eyes stayed fixed on his face. But then you came in, quiet, steady, unshaken. You did your work, said nothing, but somehow you turned all my noise into calm. The wind lifted the edge of her uniform. I didn't earn that calm, Brandon continued. I didn't deserve your respect. But I felt it. And I started to change. He stepped closer. I love you. I don't want you cleaning up after me anymore. I want you beside me. As my woman. As my equal. Grace's lips parted slightly. She looked him up and down. Where's your ego? She asked. He took a deep breath. Gone. She raised an eyebrow. Your insults. Buried. She looked straight into his eyes. Your fists. Never again, he said. And Caleb. Brandon smiled, his voice calm. He's my brother now. He helped me become this man. He wants this for us too. Behind the hedges, quiet sounds shifted. Grace glanced past Brandon. Richard stood not far away, dressed in a long brown robe. Beside him, Caleb leaned forward slightly. Several workers stood nearby. All quiet. All watching. Grace looked back at Brandon. So, what are you asking me, really? Brandon reached into his back pocket slowly. He pulled out a small black box. Gasps came from the hedges. Grace's hand flew up to her mouth. Her knees locked in place. Brandon dropped to one knee. His hand lifted the box toward her. Inside was a simple silver ring with a single round diamond. He looked up. "Grace," he said softly, "will you marry me? Not as my maid. Not as a quiet shadow. But as my queen. My equal." Her eyes filled. Tears gathered and blinked down her cheeks. "I sniff. Only if you promise," she whispered, "that you'll never try to slap me again." Laughter burst out from behind the hedges. Brandon chuckled. "I wouldn't dare. You slap harder." Grace took his hand gently and pulled him up. She nodded. Brandon stood slowly, not letting go of her hand. Behind them, Caleb clapped first. Loud and proud. One of the staff covered her mouth, laughing softly. Richard gave a quiet nod and wiped the corner of his eye with his thumb. Grace leaned into Brandon's chest. The wind caught her ponytail and sent it swaying. Months passed. Music filled the great hall of the mansion. The walls echoed with drumming, laughter, and the soft clinking of glasses. Tables were dressed in white linen and covered with white flowers. Guests danced in flowing agados and sparkling gellies. The chandeliers shimmered above their heads. At the top of the grand staircase, Grace stood. She no longer wore her black uniform. Her body was wrapped in a white beaded gown that sparkled under the lights. The fabric hugged her softly and flowed down her legs. Her ponytail was gone. Her hair swept into an elegant bun. Diamond pins glinted on either side of her head. She took a deep breath. Then slowly she walked down the steps. Brandon waited at the altar. He wore a sharp cream tuxedo with gold buttons. His hands were folded in front of him. His eyes never left her. Each step Grace took was light but firm. The crowd watched in stillness. When she reached him, Brandon reached out his hand. She placed hers in it. They turned together to face the priest. And just before the words began, Grace leaned in and whispered near his ear. "No more slaps." Brandon smiled. "Only kisses," he said. They turned back. The ceremony began. And in that hall, surrounded by family, former strangers, and whispers of the past, the maid became the bride. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you did, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below to share your thoughts. See you in the next video. And don't forget to share it with friends and family who love heartfelt tales.